Well, hello again, people. It's me, your favorite ghoulish, weird, sociopathic Uncle Pinky from Stupid Pedal Tricks. Stupid Pedal Tricks with Pink Jimmy Photon. Today, we're dicking around with one of these. My buddy, the Butcher, put one of these together recently, and I really liked his demo of it. I thought it sounded great, so I figured, okay, I'm going to build me one. Well, of course I did, and I absolutely fucking hated it. My God, what an ass-sounding circuit. It was like, it had no clarity, it just sounded like mud. Everything about it was just pretty much despicable, and of course it had no output gain whatsoever. I mean, we're talking probably 6 dB quieter when the pedal was on than it was in bypass. And the fuzz control really didn't do much of anything at all. And it was just altogether just like a really, really shitty design. This is the first one of these I ever built, so I was kind of surprised that it sucked so hard. But anyways, I used the stellar build doc from, you know it, tagboardeffects.blogspot.com. This was done by Mark himself, which was, good, but and there's a lot of people that have built it that apparently liked it. There's people that say it sounds just like the original. I'm going to talk for a second while you look at this here schematic, provided I can get this thing to stand up. And I'm going to tell you what I did to it. Because as I was like dicking around with this thing, I was like, wow, this thing sucks. So I went and I tried. Luckily, I had the brilliant idea of socketing my transistors, which sometimes I do and sometimes I don't, with the idea that perhaps if the circuit was worthy, maybe I'd throw some of them like expensive, ancient, high-end, germanium NPNs that I've still got stashed. I've got a whole bunch of them. And this thing just sucked. I mean, it was terrible. So the first thing I did when looking at the schematic here was, you see that 0.001 thing right there? That thing was literally sucking the entire life out of the circuit to begin with, right from the get-go. Way too big for a snubber cap, in my opinion. And so I took it the hell out of there. Next up, it was like the first thing I did on the other end, looking at it, was I was like, well, that 100 nanofarad cap to ground right there is going to suck all the tone out of everything. So I took it out. Huge, huge improvement. Just cutting the little, connection right here. And I was like, cool. Excuse me a moment. But it was still going through the two resistors, so it was like having a 25K resistance there with a 1 nanofarad cap bypassing it up at the top up here. So what I did was I was like, well, the first thing I thought of was, well, cool, man. Let's modify that into a tone control. And what we'll do is we'll use like a 25K pot, because we got 10 and 15 is 25, and I just happen to have 25K pots. And we're going to make it so that you can pan between the two different sides of it with the 1 nanofarad at the top up here and the 100 nanofarad at the bottom. And it worked, and it made a difference in the way that the circuit sounded, definitely, but I really didn't like the sound. It just kind of sucked up the life out of it too much. So my suggestion was get it the fuck out of there, which is what I did. Instead, what I did, though, was I was looking at the circuit and thinking about how it worked, and I realized that the fuzz knob works counterintuitively. It's written up with pin 3 being over on this side, but if you look at it, it makes more sense for pin 1 to be on that side, because then as you turn it up, it gets more trebly. Not much, just slightly. I mean, because basically you're going between having a 47 nanofarad cap on one side and the summed caps on this side here. When you look at how the circuit works there, So the 22 the 2.2 nanofarad and the 3.3 nanofarad equals out to 5.5 nanofarad, which is basically like a treble booster value. And then you got the 47 nanofarad on the input. Q2, you don't even freaking need. It doesn't really do much of anything at all. I mean, it's surprising that it's even in there or what the point is. But I did find that it seemed to work best. I mean, in terms of actually doing something, if I put a real high gain NPN in there, so I used a Darlington, I think it's a Darlington, an MPSA 13. HFE was reading about 1K on my crappy little Chinese meter. For Q1, I went with NTE 47 because I was just randomly trying transistors and found that the higher the gain was, the better the circuit was, and you could definitely get it way above unity gain. So my recommendation there is NTE 47s are like under $1 a piece. Get yourself some, slap a couple in there. You're looking for about roughly 2,000 for an HFE. 2,000 or higher is good, and about 1,000 or more on Q2. All right. So what I ended up doing was I jumpered from pin 1. I had to reverse the wires on the fuzz pot. Pin 3, as shown on the Vero layout, is actually backwards, and on the schematic it's not labeled, so I labeled it 3 and 1. When you go and switch the order of those two connections, as you turn the fuzz pot up, it actually functions properly. At the output of it is an extra special bonus. It kind of needed, it was a little ratty sounding, and it kind of needed a little bit of compression. Fucking thing. Kind of needed a little bit of compression in there. So I just added a simple back-to-back diode clipper right off the output of the fuzz pot, which is actually pin 1, which would normally be what would go to ground in most circuits if you're turning it to the right. So right between pin 3 of the volume and pin 1 of the fuzz, I connected those together with the diode clipper at the end. Everything else in the circuit is stock. I'm going to back up a little bit here so you can see this freaking thing. You can see what I did with it. There's no surprises. I thought the input needed to have a better input impedance because it really didn't have much of one. So I put in a big big resistor there. I did play with trying to get a little more balls out of it by making the 100K resistor with the 47 nanofarad cap up top. Smaller and larger didn't really make much of a difference. Also tried going up in value on the 3.3 nanofarad cap that feeds pin 3 of the fuzz pot. Didn't make any difference either. This circuit basically really is just